Hey everybody, it's Jason with Parallel Reality coming back with you here today with an article from the Daily Signal. It's dated October 31st, or Halloween. It says 3 ways the left plans to stack every branch of government. Oh, can't wait to hear this. This is if Kamala wins, and I'm recording this prior to the election a few days beforehand, so who knows what the results are at this point, but if she wins, well, this is what we have to look forward to. So maybe this is the video I'll put up on election day. Anyway, let's get into it and see what these idiots have in store for everybody if Kamala wins. As elections have become not merely choices of policy change, but referenda on the full-scale, top-to-bottom destruction of America's form of government and way of life. Democratic Party candidates in the 2024 election have proposed policies that would radically and irrevocably alter America's constitutional order. Liberal candidates have endorsed plans that would fundamentally transform all 3 branches of government, assure permanent left-wing power, and affect the domination of American politics by a polarized ideological minority. And of course, we have what everybody on the left or the far left says they want to do, is just stack the Supreme Court. And this is basically because the Supreme Court has made decisions that they just don't like. So their response to it is that they essentially need to completely destroy this institution. Okay, instead of going, yes, it's probably not a good idea. So it says no institution has experienced such a concerted and sustained attack on its legitimacy than the Supreme Court. After decades of activists dominating the judicial branch, former President Donald Trump appointed 3 justices that tilted the court in an originalist direction, sparking instant cries to change the number of justices for the first time since 1869. I didn't know it went back that far. So this would allow the Biden-Harris administration to expand the court and pack it with liberal judicial activists. Right, that's what they want to do. Kind of like, the ones that are on the court right now. So since the Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization decision, the Democratic Party debate has centered not on whether candidates should stack the Supreme Court, but how openly it should take place. In the 2020 Democratic primaries, no fewer than 11 Democratic presidential hopefuls supported court packing or were open to it. Although he opposed the notion during the primaries, President Joe Biden signed Executive Order 14023 shortly after taking office, establishing a panel to study the issue. There shouldn't even be a panel about it, it's just stop. It says the risks of court expansion are considerable, including that it could undermine the very goal of some of its proponents of restoring the court's legitimacy, concluded the commission's 198 pages of discussion materials, not least because court packing could be perceived by many as a partisan maneuver. Well, no shit, Sherlock, that's exactly what it is. Since the number of Supreme Court justices is not enumerated in the Constitution, dissatisfied members of Congress have introduced court-packing legislation of their own. So last July, Senator Ed Markey, who is a radical leftist, a Democrat of Massachusetts, introduced the Judiciary Act, there we go, to add 4 new justices to the Supreme Court, inflating the court to 13 members. The Planned Parenthood Federation of America is proud to support the Judiciary Act, said the bill's official press release. Of course they are. Radical Leftist Foundation supports radical leftist thing because they didn't get their way and they want to keep killing babies because that's how they stay in business. In September, Senator Ron Wyden, who is another radical leftist, Democrat of Oregon, so naturally, says introduced the Judicial, I don't know why I can't say that word all of a sudden, Modernization and Transparency Act, which would expand the Supreme Court to 15 members, force the Senate to schedule a vote on Supreme Court nominations within 6 months, and require a 2/3 supermajority before the Supreme Court could overturn any act of Congress. So they're effectively making the Supreme Court subservient to Congress, which it shouldn't be. It's separate. That's kind of the whole point of the separation of powers. Okay? It says during a speech in Austin this July, Biden proposed 3 reforms to the Supreme Court. And the most consequential would establish an 18-year term limit for Supreme Court justices, which would mandatorily retire 3 of the court's center-right bloc. It's Clarence Thomas, who has served 33 years, Chief Justice Roberts at 19 years, and Justice Samuel Alito, 18 years, who is the author of the Dobbs decision. So 2 of the 3 that people on the right like the most. Yeah, that just happens to be completely convenient. Says Biden waited so long because he has some sense of institutional history. Vice President Kamala Harris has no such grounding, and hopefully she, as of the time that this goes up, will not be, not have a promotion. So in 2020, then freshman Senator Harris denounced the appointment of Justice Amy Coney Barrett as an illegitimate process. Ironically, undermining citizens' faith in their own government is a cornerstone of Russian propaganda. Yeah, there we go. And how is it illegitimate? We elected a president, he nominated her, and she's on the court. We're done here. It says now that the Democratic Party has sidelined Biden, Harris's efforts to pack the Supreme Court have gone into overdrive. Candidate Harris said she was open to this conversation about increasing the number of people on the United States Supreme Court during a 2019 campaign stop in New Hampshire, and reiterated, "I do believe that there should be some kind of reform of the court," at this month's CNN town hall. The issues section of the Harris Wall's website, dubbed A New Way Forward, which is a communist slogan, endorses requiring justices to comply with ethics rules that other federal judges are bound by and imposing term limits. It says the Founding Fathers intended lifetime tenure to give Supreme Court justices the requisite independence to guard the Constitution and the rights of individuals from the arts of designing men, dangerous innovations in the government, and serious oppressions of the minor party, wrote Alexander Hamilton in the Federalist Papers. It's number 78. And what is that link to? Just going to we'll read that. Oh, okay. It says, if then the courts of justice are to be considered as the bulwarks of a limited constitution against legislative encroachments, then nothing will contribute so much as this to that independent spirit engendered by the permanent tenure of judicial offices. There, I said it right that time. It says, the legal left has artificed an argument that eliminating lifetime tenure would not require a constitutional amendment as long as the legislation shifted justices to lower courts. Well, you shouldn't do it anyway. Says the left aims to remove all obstacles to its radical agenda. Says court packing would not simply alter the structure of the Supreme Court, it would convert it into a subsidiary of other branches, as I was saying, destroying our constitutional order, said First Liberty Executive General Counsel, okay, and this just jumped, but thank you, First Liberty Executive General Counsel Hiram Sasser. A litany of Supreme Court cases, including Roe v. Wade, Doe v. Bolton, Casey v. Planned Parenthood, Obergefell v. Hodges, and Bostock v. Clayton County, show the harm an unelected group of judicial radicals can inflict on the nation's Republican and moral order. And see, small r Republican, not big R Republican. So, yeah, in regards to that first part, yeah, the court should not be packed. It should stay the way it is, and it's supposed to be a separate branch of government. Simple as that. So, 2, stacking the Congress. Says the radical left is not content without merely changing the Supreme Court. It aims for permanent control of all 3 branches of the federal government. Democratic proposals would radically reshape the legislative branch as well. Says perhaps the most extreme and least noted attempt to assure liberal control over the legislature is the Democratic Party's Congress-packing scheme of adding up to 6 new states to the United States, bringing with them 12 senators and approximately 8 members of the House of Representatives. And it says, we unequivocally support statehood for D.C., declares a 2024 Democratic Party platform. Democrats support self-determination for Puerto Rico. Democrats also support self-determination for the U.S. Virgin Islands, Guam, the Commonwealth of the North Mariana Islands, and American Samoa. We will create a congressional task force to study equal voting rights and House representation. Well, they're not states, so can we just spend our money on other things, please? So it is important to note that Congress already allows representation for U.S. territories. That is correct. Although these elected officials do not vote on final passage of legislation in the House, they take part in committee hearings and committee votes. And the Virgin Islands lady is the one I'm thinking of. I think it's Stacey Plaskett, and she's a nut job leftist. So, so that's why they want to do it. It says, there we go. There's where I was. Further, 3 of these proposed states would qualify as America's tiniest jurisdictions. American Samoa, I'm guessing that's the population, 49,710, would have 1/10 the population of America's smallest state, conservative Wyoming, a population of 576,851. Says most importantly, these territories are far more liberal than the U.S. mainland. Voters in Puerto Rico are less than half as likely as other Americans to identify with the Republican Party, and only 5% of voters in the District of Columbia are registered Republicans. The Democrats' Congress-packing scheme would move the nation's legislative center of gravity far to the left. So see, this is for them is about power. It's not about keeping the constitutional order where, they just want the power, so they want to change everything. They're it's like the version of you ever play a board game with someone and they keep losing, so they're like, well, no, we should do this instead. That's basically what this is. It says Democrats already overrepresent liberal areas by counting illegal immigrants in the U.S. Census. Each congressional district represents roughly 700,000 people. There are a minimum of 10 million illegal immigrants in the United States, although the number is likely far higher. I've seen as high as even 20 million. Thus, counting them packs additional members into Congress, particularly in sanctuary cities or states. So, it skipped again. So here we go. It says an inaccurate U.S. Census count redistributes 8 congressional seats, according to one expert analysis. It gives extra seats to California, 3, Texas, 2, New York, New Jersey, and Florida, 1 each, and it takes seats away from Alabama, Idaho, Michigan, Missouri, Minnesota, Ohio, Rhode Island, and West Virginia. It's 1 seat each. Illegal immigrants alone transfer 1 seat each from Ohio, Alabama, and Minnesota to California, Texas, and New York. This also impacts the presidency, as we will see below. It says, finally, the Democratic Party aims to curb small d Democratic control over the election of members of Congress under the guise of fighting gerrymandering, because everything's always subterfuge for them. It says, proposals such as Ohio Proposition 1 would replace the current status quo, in which House voting maps are drawn up by elected state officials with an unelected board of experts. These efforts, which have been underway for a long time, are led by such groups as All on the Line, the National Democratic Redistricting Committee, and the National Redistricting Action Fund. This Hungarian-born billionaire Democratic donor George Soros was the single largest contributor to the committee in 2018, giving $2.6 million in 2018, reported OpenSecrets.org. The most visible spokesperson for this plan is former Obama Attorney General Eric Holder, who inverted Michelle Obama's statement, when they go low, we go high, to when they go low, we kick them. Is it likely Obama's self-described wingman would preside over a nonpartisan undertaking? No, it's not. All right, yeah, this shouldn't be done either, okay? If we're going to implement like one Democratic state, then you got to look into splitting off that part of Idaho that wants to, or I'm sorry, part of Oregon that wants to secede into Idaho, or the California movement that wants to secede from the state of California. You got to give a Republican territory too. So if it goes one way, it's got to go the other way. So number 3, stacking the presidency. I haven't heard this one. It says, although the Democratic Party has held the presidency of 12 of the last 16 years, it remains outraged that constitutional precepts hold back a more permanent grasp. The Democratic Party already maximizes its advantages by counting illegal immigrants in the U.S. Census. By shifting congressional power toward blue states, counting non-citizens in the census also increases the number of electoral college votes controlled by blue states. It says the greater concern is not that illegal immigrants are counted in the census. It is that they are also voting in U.S. elections. Some sanctuary jurisdictions openly allow non-citizens to vote, although purportedly not for federal office. And why this is even a thing, I don't know, because this shouldn't be a thing. It says, but the widespread distribution of absentee ballots, coupled with loose standards governing the registration of voters under a 1993 federal bill, create a perfect storm for illegal immigrant voter fraud. It says the 1993 National Voter Registration Act requires government employees to offer to register anyone who obtains a driver's license to vote, but a federal court ruling prohibits officials from verifying that those who register are U.S. citizens. This has led to non-citizens registering and voting in U.S. elections. Again, shouldn't be happening under any circumstance. Like, I kind of look at it like, I can't just like go to France and vote in their national elections. Like, that's ridiculous, and anybody would say that that's ridiculous. So why can people just walk into our country and vote? Again, it's the Democrats just want power. That's it. That's why they're doing this. As this reporter has noted at the Washington Stand, says in Pennsylvania, Department of State official Jonathan Marks testified that non-citizens voluntarily told the state they had illegally voted 544 times in elections held between 2000 and 2017, representing one of every 172,000 votes cast in the swing state. An official review of Georgia's voting rolls found 1,634 non-citizens had attempted to register to vote in the swing state between 1997 and 2002. Virginia removed 5,556 non-citizens from its voting rolls between 2011 and 2017. Non-citizens had voted 7,474 times between 1988 and 2017, officials found. In North Carolina, voter rolls showed 1,454 registered voters who did not appear to be naturalized before Election Day 2014, according to the Public Interest Legal Foundation, and 89 attempted to vote. As once cast, there is no way to differentiate which ballot belongs to a specific person. Voter fraud is permanent. And there's always going to be some kind of voter fraud, but that doesn't mean we should try to shore it up as much as humanly possible. So again, this just shouldn't happen. Only citizens should be voting, and why this is even a controversial thing, I don't know. So the Democratic Party opposes any efforts to rein in this abuse, although it is opposed by a supermajority of Americans. 83% of Americans, including two-thirds of Democrats, favor requiring voters to provide proof of citizenship, and I, again, don't see why this is a thing that's a problem. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, Republican of Louisiana, has said that the House must pass the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility, or SAVE Act, to address this clear and very real threat to election integrity. And yes, it should be. I think Mike Lee of Utah is the one who wrote that, and because he puts it out on X all the time, and he's good. So yeah, go ahead, and this should be supported, this act. As further, the left aims to remove the final constitutional restraint on its power by abolishing the Electoral College. That's going to be a problem. So the New York Times even declared the Electoral College is the greatest threat to our democracy. No, it's not. It's people like you writing articles like that. As the Founding Fathers, well versed on the destructive nature of pure democracies, established a constitutional democracy where no majority could deprive an individual of his or her God-given, unalienable rights. They also forged a system that required candidates to seek national unity by representing all areas and regional interests of the country. In addition to other problems with the national popular vote, without the Electoral College, elections will be dominated by massive population centers, which are far more liberal than rural areas. So yeah, I live in Illinois, for example, and I've said that a million times. I live in actually the Chicago area. So this whole state, if it wasn't for Chicago, Illinois is a red state. Okay, everybody knows that. But Chicago dominates the entire thing. So the whole state is essentially bends to the whims of what happens in Chicago. So I know how this goes already, and that's just at a state level. So how would you like it to be at a federal level? For those of you in California, do you want San Francisco and Los Angeles running your entire state? For people in New York, do you want New York City running your entire... I mean, how is it with them running your entire state? How would you like that to be running the country? That's what I meant to say for California, is how would you like the policies of San Francisco and LA to run the entire country? I don't think you'd like that very much. I mean, we're already kind of seeing already in the last few years what it's like when those policies run the entire country, and it's not good. All right? So it says the left aims to add a permanent realignment of American society from a constitutional republic to a European-style welfare state with greater division along the lines of race and ethnicity. It has proposed policies that would accomplish that aim. And this election, it plans to implement them. Hopefully, by the time this goes up, that, assuming I put this up before, after the election, that Trump is the president-elect and we don't have to worry about this, at least for another 4 years. Says when the left loses by the rules they put in place, they try to change the rules. Representative Chuck Fleischmann, Republican of Tennessee, told Washington Watch with Tony Perkins recently. It's pathetic, and he's 100% right about that. Says, but left unchecked, America may face a future of perpetual dominance by the radical left, and that would be awful. You ready for the communist states of America? Because you shouldn't be. Anyway, what do you think about this? Do you agree with these things? Does this scare you? Let me know in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.